It can't be understated just how disastrous the early years of Retro Studios were. A company completely rudderless on what to do with game development, overloaded with unimpressive projects that were not progressing, and a president who wasn't really going to help steer that ship. It's a miracle that Nintendo managed to course correct Retro Studios into the amazing studio they are known as these days. However, Nintendo's course correction saw them make Retro Studios focus on one single project, being the legendary Metroid Prime, forcing them to scrap all of their other projects as a result. And although we've already looked at their football and vehicle combat game, it seemed like this last one was going to pull through and be finished with Nintendo's approval. It was an action RPG, a genre that would wind up not being that common on the Nintendo GameCube, and compared to the other projects Retro was doing outside of Metroid Prime, it seemed like this game was the only one that was going somewhere until it got cancelled, and I really want to talk about it. So, today on Beta Quest, we're going to be looking at Retro Studios' Raven Blade. Beginning development in 1999 under the working title of RPG before being called Runeblade and then Ravenblade, the game was originally developed to be a traditional turn-based RPG, but it was decided to make the game an action RPG later on. Although there is a lot of footage and concept material for Ravenblade that was revealed, very little about this game is known that well. Although what we do know is that Ravenblade was going to be set in a traditional Western style type medieval fantasy environment, featuring your expected rock monsters, dragons, knights, and the other things you'd find in this stuff. The known story elements involved a knight who would have had to wield a legendary sword called a Ravenblade in order to face off with an evil character known as the Beast Lord. And that's about it. No other story details were revealed. To try and give us an understanding of what this game was like, Nintendo insiders tried to describe what they have found. Unfortunately, it's not the most informative stuff and sounds more like common sense and stuff you would expect in an RPG. Aside from the story details and calling the game an action RPG, the insiders revealed a game that featured the ability to use magic and weapons, talk to various kinds of people like blacksmiths and royalty, collect objects and weapons, go to places like ruins and flying cities, and it's a single player game. I know, that's a very unique type of game, very unprecedented for the RPG genre. I don't really know what I was saying back there. But the insiders do reveal that the game was going to be a very graphically impressive game, with advanced modeling, impressive lighting, and cinema quality animation. So that was something we could have looked forward to, maybe. Much like Retro Studios' other games, Raven Blade's development was very slow due to the small development team being unprepared to develop GameCube games, with no dev kits initially, before getting one dev kit that everyone had to share. Not only that, but there was also no clear direction in terms of how to develop the game or what to really do, with one of these struggles being to try and figure out how to get the real-time combat mechanics to work properly. However, Raven Blade proved to be the most progressive of Retro Studios' original projects, with the game actually progressing far enough to not only be a game, unlike the others, which were mostly tech demos, but also ready enough to showcase some trailers to generate interest in the public. As a result, following the cancellation of Thunder Rally and Retro Football in 2000 and several subsequent layoffs of developers from said teams, remaining members and resources were transferred under the direction of Nintendo to Ravenblade and Metroid Prime. The project was shown off in E3 2001 with these trailers, and they don't really show much of anything new that we've already talked about, with the trailers and footage showcasing battles, dragons, and monsters against typical fantasy backdrops, although one does see the impressive animations and graphics through these videos, so there's that. But if the game's progress did manage to progress far enough to be acceptable enough by Nintendo to continue development and be shown off, why haven't we seen this game on store shelves? Despite allowing Ravenblade to continue development due to being the most progressive of Retro Studios' original titles, Nintendo was more interested in Metroid Prime and were actually siphoning away developers towards Metroid Prime, slowing development even further. The reality was that Metroid was a high-profile first-party Nintendo-owned IP, one with an established fan base and presence in popular culture, and therefore higher interest and higher chances of selling. So it was expected for Nintendo to want to focus more on Metroid Prime rather than this other IP that may not even do well. It's a bigger risk. On top of that, Nintendo wasn't pleased with how long Ravenblade was taking to develop and demanded significant progress by July 24th of 2001, or else they would cancel the project completely. However, 5 days before the 24th of July, the game was officially cancelled, with further layoffs and the remaining members of the team being absorbed into Metroid Prime's team to focus on finishing that game up. I'd say of the 3 cancelled retro games, Ravenblade would be the one that we all would miss out on, as the GameCube was pretty much lacking in RPGs. Sure, the GameCube actually had RPGs, unlike the N64 practically, but compared to the Super Nintendo and what the PlayStation 2 was offering, we could have used some additional RPGs on the GameCube. Besides, it's a new IP, and those are just as important to a system as well-established IPs, even if the big studios, shareholders, and financial advisors would say otherwise. However, perhaps there was another good reason this game was cancelled, as according to the current president of Retro Studios, Michael Kobalt, when reflecting on the project, he blasted this game as an awful and horrible experience and immediately destroyed the game. So, that's not that good. That's pretty bad to hear. Granted, looking at the insider information, they didn't really tell us anything interesting about this game. So maybe it was for the best that this game got canceled. That's new to hear, you know? Actually, I don't think so, but that was Ravenblade. In a way, it's kind of unfortunate that the game had to be canceled because this seemed like a pretty interesting game. Again, the GameCube didn't have many RPGs under its belt, and this one seemed kind of interesting with its medieval looking world and stuff. And it was an action RPG, my favorite kind. However, maybe it was for the best that this game got cancelled. I mean, the president said that the game wasn't really that good, and the insider information didn't really tell us anything of interest. So perhaps this game would have just been a generic and uninteresting RPG. And besides, Metroid Prime already had a strenuous development, and that was with the company's full attention. Who knows how that game would have turned out had their attention been divided between the 2 projects. But oh well, at least Retro managed to come out of the forest with Metroid Prime with a clearer path forward, and that's what matters. Now, if only we can see what's going on nowadays with them and Metroid Prime 4, that would be great. But anyway, this is K-Steel Beta Quest signing out. I'll see you all later. This was a Kobalt Steel video by MS Bernie. Like, comment, and subscribe if you liked what you saw. Until next time, see you all later.